Dricus, what if you had said that, oh, Francis Ngannou as heavyweight champ, Israel as light heavyweight, Dricus Du Plessis as middleweight, Kamaru Usman as a welterweight? Then we'll have even 4 African kings. Wouldn't that have been so beautiful? Couldn't Dricus have come up with something which is more smarter? What's up, my people? It's your boy Yao Crack. Thank you for joining me here today. Okay, so today I'm going to divert a little bit into the UFC. As you know, for Africa, we have about 3 champions that are currently in the UFC. Okay, that used to be in the UFC because I think one of them, Francis Ngannou, he has left to another sports league, that's the PFL, and Kamaru Usman lost his title to Leon Edwards. So that makes it 1 African king remaining, that's Israel Adesanya. So Israel went off on Dricus Du Plessis due to an interview that Dricus Du Plessis did the other time, which was in sort of a bad taste, okay? And many people are descending on Israel for being so-called racist.
Let's say so. And then obviously this time last year, 3 African champions. That has obviously changed. Is it a little does it bum you out? There's not as much gold potentially going back the next time they go? Or do you see this as an opportunity? Now you do get to be the guy if and when they show up to Africa.
Okay, so the guy's question, he says 3 African champions. And mind you, Dricus Du Plessis is also African. Okay, he's a South African, and I think he was raised over there. He fights out of South Africa. So that's why the question was put in that way. Although he's Caucasian, yes, he's African. And so he was asked the question that, oh, it seems the 3 African kings had the trouble defending their belts, and how does he feel about that? And note carefully, look how the question was structured, and look at how this guy responds to it.
Well, I mean, did those belts ever go to Africa? As far as I know, it came to America and New Zealand. I'm going to take a belt to Africa. I'm the African fighter in the UFC. Myself and Cameron, we breathe the African air. We wake up in Africa every day. We train in Africa. We're African born. We're African raised. We still reside in Africa. We train out of Africa.
Let me pause it before he continues, because he said that did the belts ever make it to Africa? Yes, the belts visited Africa. That's when Israel Adesanya took his belts to his school to show to the kids over there, and went to make a speech over there motivating them and all of that. I think that was when he won the interim championship. Kamaru Usman has also taken the belts to Africa. Francis Ngannou has also taken the belts to Africa. But it seems Dricus is approaching from a perspective of the fighters being residents in Africa, which is a very bad way to twat their whole achievements around. Okay, but let's just go a bit further into it. His response.
That's an African champion, and that's who I'll be. Thank you.
He said that's an African champion, and that's who he will be. Dricus, that doesn't make you an African champion. Having the belts in Africa doesn't make you an African champion. If these 3 guys hadn't moved out of Africa, okay, and we'll come to the circumstances under which they moved. The Adesanya family, his father moved out of Nigeria to Ghana first in search of greener pastures, or in search of a safe environment for his children to go. So first of all, they moved to Ghana, and they were like, okay, we can do better than this. I'm Ghanaian. So they decided to move to the USA. But because of 9/11, they're like, whoa, if America, the free world, is that wild, why don't they just move to New Zealand? So they left their family behind and traveled all the way to New Zealand to raise their kids. And that's how Israel Adesanya came up as a fighter. And he's now standing out. And Africans love him for that. Kamaru Usman, the Usman family, their dad had to take them all the way from Nigeria to the US. Mr. Usman got into a bit of trouble with the law, and he was imprisoned for many years, leaving Kamaru, okay, to cater for their family. Kamaru had to fight his way up to cater for the family and become the welterweight champion in the UFC. This wouldn't have been possible if they had still remained in Africa. Francis Ngannou, he has the worst story of them all. Francis Ngannou grew up was born and raised in Cameroon. So Francis Ngannou had to work in a sand mine as a teenager in Cameroon. Then later on, he heard of this immigration route through the Sahara Desert. They passed through Libya and they had to cross the Mediterranean Sea, whatever seas at the top over there, get into Spain, then go into France before coming into the US. And that's the tortuous journey that Francis Ngannou went through. Mind you, many of the people he traveled with lost their lives, including babies. Some of them died in the desert, some of them drowned in the sea, and some of them even also get arrested and murdered by the immigration officers over there. But fortunately for for Francis Ngannou, due to his perseverance and his grit, he made it to France. And he initially wanted to be a boxer, but he was introduced into mixed martial arts because you know that the fights are easier to make and the money comes quicker. So he was also introduced to that, and from there he moved to America to fight in the UFC and became heavyweight champion. These three, because of their perseverance and achievements, they became crowned the three African kings. Okay, inspiring many Africans. When you make mention of the three African kings, these three guys come to mind, and they are adored by their people. Mind you, no African has ever complained that the African kings do not reside in Africa, because they understand the circumstances under which they had to migrate. They had to migrate for their lives. They had to migrate for their legacy. They had to migrate to put food on their family's table. Now, take a look at Dricus Du Plessis, a Caucasian, someone who grew up in Apartheid, South Africa. Do you know what the Apartheid was? That's when laws were made for whites in South Africa to have a certain level of privilege, and wealth over real South Africans. Okay, that's segregation. There were communities for white people, there were communities for black people, but the whites had more privilege, they had more economic power, they had more social power, they had more political power over the blacks in South Africa. Okay, I'm not doing this to paint a picture that all of them are bad. That's why when you go to South Africa, you see many white people over there, many white South Africans who are hardly poor. Okay, they have they are more privileged than the average South African. Okay, so for somebody who is a beneficiary of the apartheid, do you get me? A beneficiary of the apartheid to criticize people who had to migrate for their livelihoods, to insult them, or to try to illegitimize their descendancy as Africans, or their legitimacy as African fighters or African champions, is just ingenious. It's just wrong. It's petty. And even worse than that, it causes division. And it just shocks me that certain somebody like Amala Ekonobi just came out guns blazing, not understanding anything, not understanding the dynamics of this issue. This was just beyond a matter of a black person going against a white person criticizing a black person. No, it's the fact that Dricus Du Plessis had the nerve. Okay, I understand what he was trying to do. He was trying to hype himself up, to give himself a good standing, to promote himself to be the next the middleweight title contender. But he could have done it in a smarter way. What he did was plainly dumb. It was stupid and it was uncalled for. Trying to say that they don't wake up in Africa, they don't breathe in Africa, they don't train in Africa, the belts are not residing physically in Africa. It's just a non-argument. It's the fact that Dricus Du Plessis didn't think. Okay, he refused to think. He refused to apply. He said, "Why do you think these guys are still in New Zealand? Do you think it's just easy for them to just move with their entire team back to Africa? These guys have built their lives, their entire careers at where they are stationed now. Okay, Kamaru Usman has his whole family, his entire training camp, his coaches, his management, everybody based in the US. You don't expect him to just leave and say, okay, now I'm good. I just have to move back to Nigeria and I'm come to make my country great or whatever it is. No, that would be a selfish move on his behalf because many people are invested in him. Okay, he has his management, he has his coaches. Same thing for Israel Adesanya. He has his coaches over there. He cannot just come back to Nigeria. Although we would love that for him to have a place in Nigeria now, he can't just do that because right now the brand or the name Israel Adesanya is bigger than just himself. Many people are invested in him, and he cannot just make a selfish decision of just moving there. Mind you, these people haven't just neglected their countries. Israel, after winning the interim middleweight title, he went back to Nigeria to motivate the kids of his primary school. Kamaru Usman also has been attending MMA leagues over there, and he's even planning on opening a gym and also a fighting league, an MMA fighting league in Nigeria. Francis Ngannou has even already set up the Francis Ngannou Foundation for kids in Cameroon to go into combat sports. These guys haven't abandoned their nations. They haven't abandoned their ethnicity. They haven't abandoned their country. They haven't abandoned their nationality. They haven't abandoned Africa. So for Dricus Du Plessis to make such a statement, it's a big insult, and he should have even apologized for that. Okay, that's why a lot of Africans will still continue to support Israel Adesanya. They understand where he comes from, and I hope the rest of you also understand where his anger comes from. That this isn't about just a white guy coming after black guys. There's somebody who is a beneficiary. It's not Dricus Du Plessis' fault. It's not his fault for being white. It's not his fault for being privileged. Okay, by what he said. His words are his responsibility, and he should have done proper research before coming out to spew such nonsense. So for the rest of you that are attacking Israel Adesanya, claiming he's racist and all of that, think twice. This guy lives in a predominantly Caucasian countries. This guy is trained with white people. These guys are managed by white people, and you think that because he called Dricus Du Plessis the cracker or the C word, that he's a racist? Come on, because yes, Israel, Kamaru, Francis have made it for more Africans to come into the UFC. Dana White even wants to start a UFC Africa. He wants to open gyms in Africa.
I'm like so focused on Africa right now. I want to do Africa so bad.
The UFC Africa that you just talked about, where in that continent do you see this happening, given that the lack of large indoor arenas?
No, it's anywhere? A great question. It's a great question. But Nigeria is what we're thinking.
And who do you think is the cause of that? It's the three African kings. It's because Africans are now tuning into the UFC, and they are watching the UFC because they see their people over there excelling. Okay, so Dricus Du Plessis was plainly dumb, and I wish to see him dragged across South Africa. Okay guys, it seems there was a bit of venom in that video, and trust me, I understand where they come from, and it's just sad that Dricus had to stay there. Yo, I know that South Africans will forever back their guy. We don't care that much. Yo, it's good for you to protect your guy. It's good for you to back your guy. Yo, just talk to your boy, right? Okay guys, that's the end of this video. Please subscribe, like this video, comment, share, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Meleji.